When I saw my son's graduation photo online, posted by his wife, not him, I didn't feel anger. I felt erased. No call, no invite, just a smiling face in a cap and gown, standing next to a woman I barely know, beneath a caption that read, "We did it." We. As if I hadn't paid for every single class, every book, every dollar of rent for 4 straight years. I stared at the photo for 5 minutes, waiting for some kind of tag, some thank you buried in the comments. Nothing. It had been 3 months since the ceremony. 3 months since he walked that stage. And I only found out because an old coworker forwarded the post, asking why I hadn't mentioned it. That night, I didn't call him. I didn't write. I just canceled the automatic rent transfer I'd been making every month. $1,250. Gone with one click. The next morning, he called, not to explain, not to apologize, but to ask why the payment hadn't gone through. What came next wasn't a screaming match. It wasn't a teary confession. It was worse. It was silence. And this story, it isn't about revenge. It's about what happens when a father who's always given finally says no. What follows might break your heart, test your loyalties, and make you question everything you believe about family. Before we go further, take a breath. You're not ready for what's coming next. My name is Harold Monroe. I'm 66, retired from Gulf Tex Engineering after 34 years, and I live alone in a modest 1-story home in northern Florida. My wife, Helen, passed away 8 years ago from pancreatic cancer. Since then, it's just been me and the quiet. And Jack, at least I thought. Jack is my only son. Smart kid. Sharp as a tack even when he was 5. He was quiet growing up, but we shared a language of projects. He didn't say much, but when we built that sailboat together, the summer he turned 10, we didn't need to. We spent 3 straight weekends in the garage, sawing, sanding, painting. When we finally pushed it into the lake behind our neighborhood, and it actually stayed afloat, he turned to me and said, "It's better than I thought it'd be." That was Jack's version of fireworks. We had our rituals, fishing trips every 4th of July, Saturday night takeout, Christmas movie marathons with matching pajama pants Helen used to force us into. I worked a lot, sometimes too much, but I never missed the important stuff. Not until I had to. When Helen got sick, everything paused. Jack was 16. I thought I was holding it together for both of us. Maybe I wasn't. After she passed, Jack became even quieter. He left for college 2 years later, got into University of Michigan. I was proud. I also panicked. Out-of-state tuition was steep, and Jack hadn't qualified for much financial aid. I picked up a second job at a hardware store, day shifts as a consultant, evenings stocking shelves. I was exhausted, but never told Jack. He needed to focus on school, not worry about bills. He never asked for money directly. He didn't need to. I wired him a fixed amount each month, covered his rent, bought him a used Toyota Corolla sophomore year so he didn't have to rely on the bus. Birthdays, I sent gift cards. Holidays, I mailed care packages. Helen's old banana bread recipe in a Tupperware he never returned. Jack rarely called. I chalked it up to being busy. Finals, group projects, internships. I told myself, he's being independent. That's good. When he did call, it was short, surface talk. "Yeah, classes are fine." "Yeah, the new apartment's all right." But he always ended with, "Thanks, Dad. Love you." I lived for that part. After graduation, Jack got married. The wedding was small, a courthouse ceremony. He said it was what they both wanted. No fuss. He sent me one photo afterward. I mailed a check. His wife's name is Lauren. I've spoken to her twice. Once on speaker when they called to thank me for an anniversary gift. Once over FaceTime for a minute and a half before she handed the phone off to Jack. She seems polite but reserved. Maybe that's just how people are now. Over time, the calls came less. Holidays passed without a voice on the other end. I'd text Merry Christmas or Happy Birthday, son, and get a thumbs up emoji back if anything. Still, I kept sending money every first of the month. Like clockwork, $1,150 for rent. Jack never asked for more, never said thanks either. I didn't mind. The love was there, I told myself. He just didn't know how to show it. One day in early spring, Jack texted, "Might be graduating this summer. Not sure of the date yet." My heart leapt. I typed and erased my reply 3 times before settling on, "That's amazing news. Keep me posted. Would love to come up if it works out." He replied, "Sure, will do." That night, I opened my old cedar chest, pulled out my navy suit, the one I wore to his high school graduation. It still fit, mostly. I took it to the dry cleaners the next day. I even started looking at flights to Ann Arbor. Didn't book anything yet, but I saved a few dates, just in case. Lauren never said a word. Jack didn't follow up either, but I figured they were busy. Senior projects, exams, life. I gave them space, but in my mind, I'd already pictured it. Me in the audience, hands shaking while trying to record with my phone. Jack spotting me from the stage and giving that half smile of his. I didn't have a formal invitation. I didn't need one. Or so I thought. A month before the expected graduation date, I texted Jack again. Just a simple line. Any idea what weekend the ceremony might be? He responded 5 hours later with, "Not sure. School hasn't sent details yet." It was vague. Too vague. But I let it slide. I told myself maybe he really didn't know yet. Maybe they were handling things differently due to COVID policies, or whatever logistics modern universities dealt with these days. I didn't want to sound pushy, so I waited. Quietly. Hopefully. That weekend, I drove down to the town square and picked out a graduation gift. I wanted something lasting. Something that might mean more than another transfer of funds. After some back and forth, I settled on a wristwatch. Classic silver face, leather band. On the back, I had it engraved. To my son, for every second I missed, I gave a lifetime of love. The clerk complimented the line, said it gave her goosebumps. I smiled, pretending it hadn't taken me 3 days and 100 crumpled napkins to get the wording just right. I wrapped the box myself, added a handwritten card, and placed it in the hall closet, next to my cleaned and pressed navy suit. All that remained was the flight confirmation. But no invitation came. 2 weeks passed, then 3. No email, no envelope, no follow-up text from Jack. I sent another message. "Hey son, still trying to plan. Do you know the date yet?" No reply. I called. It rang, then went to voicemail. I waited a day, called again. Same result. Lauren didn't respond either. I wasn't angry yet, just confused. Maybe they were overwhelmed. Maybe the school canceled in-person ceremonies. Maybe. I stopped myself. I'd always been good at building stories in my head, usually ones that made disappointment easier to swallow. I checked the university's website. Ceremony dates were clearly listed. June the 12th. That was next Saturday. I checked flight prices. They doubled. Still no word from Jack. The night before the ceremony, I laid out the suit on my bed. I wasn't sure if I'd wear it the next day or not, but seeing it there gave me the illusion of a plan. I went to bed restless. My dreams flickered between Helen's voice and the image of Jack waving from a stage that kept getting further and further away. Saturday came. I brewed a pot of coffee and sat at the kitchen table. Noon passed, then 1. No text. I called him again. Voicemail. I called a second time. Voicemail. A third, fourth, fifth, still nothing. I sat in silence, staring at the screen. It wasn't just about missing the ceremony. It was the complete absence. The erasure. Like I'd been edited out of a movie I'd funded. I put on the suit anyway. Not to go anywhere. I just wanted to remember what it felt like to be a father getting ready for his son's milestone. I stood in front of the mirror, straightened the tie. My hands shook. The watch box still sat untouched in the closet. Late that night, around 11:20 p.m., my phone buzzed. Not from Jack. From Greg Stanton, a guy I'd worked with for 15 years before we both retired. The message read, "Saw this on Facebook. Jack's big day. Congrats, man." Below it was a link. I hesitated before tapping it. It opened to Lauren's profile. A single image. Jack in his cap and gown, standing on the university lawn, sunlight bouncing off his robe, his arm around Lauren, her smile beaming. Caption: "We did it. Just us. No tag, no mention of me. No hint that anyone outside that frame existed." I blinked hard, then zoomed in. His gown looked wrinkled. He hadn't worn the tie I sent last Christmas. I stared at their faces, trying to read something, anything, beneath the joy. A trace of guilt, a flicker of hesitation. But there was nothing. I scrolled through the comments. "Congratulations, you two. So proud of you both. You did it." Each "you" felt like a paper cut. I went back to the caption. "We did it. Just us. Just us." I sat in the dark, phone in hand, heart heavier than I could remember it ever being. I didn't cry. Not then. Not that night. I just stood up, walked to the hall closet, and took out the watch. I held it in my palm, feeling the weight. The engraved words shimmered under the hallway light. I walked to my desk, opened my laptop, and wrote an email. Subject: Congrats, Body. "Hey, Jack, saw the photo. Congratulations. I'm proud of you. Wish I could have been there." I hit send before I could think twice. Then I turned off my phone, set the watch on the table, and poured myself a scotch. I sipped it in silence, staring out the window at the empty street. The next morning, when I checked my email, there was a reply. One line. "Thanks. We're good." No dad. No sorry. No explanation. Just 3 words. They cut deeper than any silence. I didn't reply to Jack's "We're good." What was there to say to that? I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to beg. I just wanted space, clarity, and silence, as I'd come to learn, was its own answer. The next morning, I logged into my banking app and canceled the recurring payment I'd been sending to Jack every month for the past 4 years. Bundled $250 on the first of every month, directly into his joint account with Lauren. Rent money, gone with a click. No note, no warning. I didn't do it out of revenge. It wasn't about punishing him. It was about stepping back. I had given all I could. I had waited for acknowledgement, for connection, for even the smallest breadcrumb of family. Instead, I got 3 words, so I gave nothing. 2 days later, my phone rang. It was him. "Hey, Dad," he said. The tone wasn't angry, just confused. "Did something happen with the transfer?" I paused, let the question hang. Then, no mistake, I stopped it. There was silence on the other end, a pause where I could hear him thinking. "Why?" he asked. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because he genuinely didn't seem to understand. "You didn't think I'd notice you graduated," I said. "Didn't think I'd want to be there?" Jack sighed. "It wasn't like that." "It felt exactly like that," I replied. "You didn't want me there, and that's fine. But if I'm not needed at your big moments, maybe I'm not needed for your rent either." There was a long pause. Then softly, "Maybe it's time we figured it out ourselves." It stunned me. Not because it was wrong, but because it was so clean. No resistance, no begging, no guilt trip. Just an acknowledgement that they'd move forward without my help. I didn't know if I felt disappointed or relieved. After we hung up, I sat for a while at the kitchen table, fingers steepled under my chin. I expected him to push back, to get defensive, to at least ask why now. But he didn't. He let me go. That should have been easier to swallow. But the quiet after that conversation gnawed at something deeper. Was this what he wanted all along? I walked into the living room and sat in my recliner, flipping through old photo albums. Jack as a toddler, frosting smeared on his cheeks. Jack in his soccer uniform, standing awkwardly next to a trophy half his size. Jack, age 14, holding his school play script with a grin that said he was nervous but excited. And just like that, a memory hit me. The school play. I'd forgotten about it. Not because it wasn't important, but because I'd buried it somewhere shame can't easily reach. Jack had begged me to come, his first speaking role. He was a supporting character in some musical about pioneers. He wore a vest made of fake fur and everything. I promised him I'd be there. But that week, work had slammed me. My second job at the hardware store overlapped with a last-minute deadline at Gulf Tech's. Helen was gone, and I was juggling bills. I stayed late to finish a design layout, thinking I'd just show up late to the play. I never made it. When I got home, Jack was already asleep. I found the program from the play on the kitchen table. He'd circled his name in red ink. Underneath, in his handwriting, was a note. "In case you don't believe I was in it." The next morning, I said, "Sorry, bud. Work got crazy." He shrugged. "It's fine." But I remember now how he wouldn't meet my eyes. How quiet the house felt that weekend. I never apologized. Not really. I justified it. "I'm working to keep the lights on," I told him later. "You think that stuff pays for itself?" It wasn't meant to hurt. It was meant to explain. But now, sitting here all these years later, I see it wasn't explanation he needed. It was presence, not money, not shoes, not electronics, just me. I thought providing was enough. I thought love could be wired monthly, like clockwork. Maybe he thought so too, for a while. I stood up, walked to my desk, and pulled out a pad of paper. My hands trembled slightly as I began to write. "Dear Jack," I wrote, "I think I missed more than your graduation." The words came slowly, haltingly, like blood from an old wound. I told him about the play, about how I remembered it, even if I'd tried not to, about how I'd chosen work that night, not realizing the cost. I told him I wasn't mad he didn't invite me to the ceremony. I told him I understood. That maybe, in some twisted way, I'd taught him it was okay to forget people who love you. "I've spent most of your life trying to make sure you never went without," I wrote. "But maybe I made you go without the one thing you really needed, a dad who showed up." When I finished, I sat there for a long time staring at the letter. Then I folded it, slipped it into an envelope, sealed it, and placed it in the drawer. I didn't send it. Not yet. It had been almost 3 weeks since the rent call, since Jack had calmly accepted the end of my support. Since I'd written a letter I couldn't yet bring myself to mail. I'd told myself that silence was enough, that space was healthy, that maybe it was better this way. But when I opened my email on a Thursday morning and saw the name Lauren in my inbox, something in me jolted. Subject line, just want to say this. The message was short. Hi, Harold. I hope you're doing okay. I know things have been weird between you and Jack. I just wanted to say, he doesn't hate you. He's not angry. He just doesn't know how to talk about things. He's always been that way. But I think it's worse with you, because he cares more than he lets on. I read it 3 times before moving. At the bottom, she added, once, Jack told me you've never said, I love you to him. Not once. I know that's not everything, but maybe it mattered to him more than he ever let on. Just thought you should know. Lauren. I sat still for almost an hour. The email stayed open on the screen. The words pulsed in my head. Never said, I love you. Had I really not? I thought back. High school graduation. I said, I'm proud of you. When he left for college, take care of yourself. On his wedding day, I think I just shook his hand. But love? Did I ever use the word? Maybe I thought actions were enough. Maybe I thought he just knew. Later that evening, I went to the drawer where I'd left the unsent letter. I didn't open it. I just looked at it, then reached for a pen and a different pad of paper. But then I stopped. Words on a page still felt distant, too safe. What if I said them? Not in person? Not yet. But maybe in a voice he could hear. I found an old voice recorder app on my phone, sat at my kitchen table, and hit record. Hey, Jack, I started. My voice cracked, but I kept going. I'm not good at this kind of thing. Never have been. I always thought if I worked hard enough, paid the bills, kept the roof over our heads, that'd be enough. I thought love was about providing. I paused. The silence in my kitchen felt like it might crush me. But I think maybe I forgot something. I continued. Maybe I didn't say what I needed to say. Maybe I should have told you a long time ago that I love you. That I've always loved you. Even when I was distant. Even when I didn't show up. Even when I messed up. I swallowed hard. I'm sorry. And I love you. I hit stop. I didn't edit it. I didn't re-record. I sent the file to his email with the subject line, from Dad. Then I turned off my phone and sat in the dark, not expecting a reply, not needing one, but hoping. The next morning, I turned the phone back on. No message, no missed call, no reply. I waited through the weekend. Nothing. By Monday, the ache started to settle back in. The silence returned. Not hostile, just heavy. On Wednesday, I did something uncharacteristic. I got in my car and drove. Not aimlessly, not blindly. I drove to their town. I hadn't been there in over a year. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. I didn't plan to knock on the door or confront anyone. I just needed to see. It was a 6-hour drive. I didn't stop once. When I arrived, it was just past 6 p.m. The sun was starting to dip, casting a golden wash across the sidewalk. I parked across the street from their apartment complex. I knew the unit from old rent receipts. Second floor, front-facing window. I sat there, engine off, watching. About 20 minutes in, the living room light flicked on. Through the sheer curtains, I saw shadows moving. Then clear as day, I saw them. Jack, Lauren, sitting at the table. He was laughing. She reached across the table and touched his arm. He looked happy. They both did. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't let myself consider before. They were a unit now, a whole, and I wasn't part of it. Not anymore. Not in the way I had been. Not in the way I wanted to be. I didn't feel anger, or even sadness, really. I felt removed, like I was watching a movie I used to be in, now played by new actors, new plot lines, and no space for my role. I didn't honk. I didn't text. I didn't knock. I just sat there. And then, slowly, I put the car in reverse, pulled out from the curb, and began the long drive home. It was dark by the time I passed the state line. The highway lights blurred into a steady rhythm. No music, just the hum of the road. I didn't cry, but I did feel something let go inside me. A tether, a string, a longing. Back home, I took the letter I'd written and burned it in the fireplace. Then I opened a map and started planning a trip out of state. Not to visit anyone, not to chase anyone, just to leave, to start over, to find what's left of me that doesn't depend on someone else choosing me back. I was halfway through my coffee when the email came in. Subject, can we talk? It was from Jack. The message itself was even shorter than the subject line. Hey Dad, can we meet? No punctuation, no time, no place, no explanation, just that. For a full minute, I stared at the screen. Then I typed, yes. We met the next afternoon at a public park halfway between our towns. It was neutral ground, just grass and benches and rusted playground equipment in the distance. He arrived 5 minutes late, wore a hoodie, hands shoved into his pockets, eyes flicking between the path and the sky. He looked older than the last time I'd seen him in person. Tired. Or maybe that was just how I remembered myself looking. Hey, he said, standing in front of me. Hey. We sat. Silence stretched between us like a tightrope. I got your voicemail, he finally said. The one you sent. I nodded. I figured. It meant a lot, he added. I just didn't know what to say. You didn't have to say anything, I replied. I just wanted you to hear it. Another pause. Then, I'm sorry for not telling you about the graduation. There it was, the thing I'd waited months to hear, maybe years. I opened my mouth, but he held up a hand. Let me finish, he said. It wasn't just about the ceremony. It was everything. Lauren felt like you never really liked her, that you only ever talked about Mom, that we were just placeholders. I blinked. I never said that. You didn't have to, he said. You talked about Mom a lot. I get it. She was amazing. But Lauren felt like she was always in a shadow, like she could never measure up. And I guess I started to feel that way too. I looked away at a squirrel darting across the grass. Do you know how many times I wanted to tell you something, but thought, what's the point? He's not going to understand anyway? I swallowed hard. I thought I was showing love, I said quietly, by supporting you, by paying for school, sending gifts, covering rent. I thought if I never let you struggle, that meant I loved you. Jack looked down at his hands. I know. I needed more than that. Words, presence. Maybe I didn't say that either. I stared ahead, my voice low. It's easier to wire money than say the right thing. He gave a faint laugh. That's true. Then something happened I wasn't prepared for. His eyes welled up. I wasn't trying to hurt you, he said. I just didn't know how to balance it. Lauren, she didn't want you there. I turned to him. She didn't want me there? He nodded slowly. When I asked about inviting you to the graduation, she said, If he comes, I won't go. I sat back, stunned. She said that? He nodded again. She thought it would be tense, that you'd bring up old things, that you'd look disappointed, and I didn't want to fight on that day. So I just didn't invite you. My stomach turned. So you chose her over me? He looked at me, calm, but tired. No, I didn't choose her. I chose peace. I felt those words like a slap. Peace? I echoed. He nodded. I didn't want drama. I didn't want anyone crying or leaving early or whispering behind someone's back. I just wanted one day to feel simple. And I ruined that just by existing, I said, bitterness creeping in. Jack sighed. It's not about you ruining anything. It's about us not knowing how to include you in a way that didn't feel hard. I wanted to scream, to say, you think it was easy for me to work 2 jobs while raising you alone? To yell, you don't get to edit me out just because I'm inconvenient. But I didn't. Because somewhere in that anger, I saw the truth. They didn't hate me. They feared me. Or rather, feared what I represented. Pain, memory, guilt. Things they didn't know how to carry. And I'd given them plenty to carry. I looked at my son, a man now, not the boy who once asked me to tie his shoes. I wish I'd done things differently, I said, but I don't regret loving you. I know, he said. I just wish I knew how to love you back in a way that didn't feel like failing. For a moment, we just breathed. 2 men on a bench, both flawed, both trying. I'm going out of state soon, I said. Taking a little trip. Might be gone a while. He nodded. Where to? Not sure yet. He smiled softly. That sounds like you. I stood. He stood too. We didn't hug. But as I turned to leave, he said, Hey, Dad. I looked back. Thanks for trying. It wasn't everything, but it was something. I left 3 days after that park bench conversation. No destination. Just a loose plan to drive west until the air felt lighter. I packed light, just enough for a week, and left a sticky note on the fridge that read, Gone a while. Don't worry. I didn't tell Jack. Didn't tell anyone. Somewhere in Arkansas, I stopped at a roadside diner and met Clara. She was 71, silver hair tied in a low knot, wearing a navy vest with patches from every state she'd driven through. We shared a booth because the place was packed, and the waitress asked if I minded. I didn't. She ordered black coffee, no cream, no sugar. You traveling for business? She asked. No, just trying to remember what peace feels like. She chuckled. You too, huh? We talked for 3 hours. Clara had a daughter who didn't invite her to her wedding. Not because of a fight, but because, as the daughter said, it was just easier this way. Clara smiled as she told the story, but I saw the fracture behind her eyes. We became travel companions after that. Separate rooms, same stops. We found a rhythm. Coffee at sunrise, gas station lunches, side roads whenever possible. We started a journal, handwritten in a cheap leather-bound book we bought at a flea market. We titled it, The Handbook for Forgotten Parents. Inside, we wrote things like, Don't measure love in invitations. It's okay to grieve people who are still alive. Sometimes silence is not punishment. It's just someone else's wound. I laughed more in those 2 weeks than I had in the past 5 years. Then, one evening, in a motel off Route 66, my phone buzzed. I expected a spam alert, maybe a weather warning. But it was from Jack. We're having a baby. Dinner this Sunday. No hello, no punctuation, but it didn't matter. I stared at it for a long time. Clara came out of the bathroom and saw my face. What's that look? She asked. I handed her the phone. She read it, then handed it back. "Well," she said, "that's something." "I don't know what to do," I admitted. "You don't have to know. You just have to decide." That night, I sat on the motel balcony with a pen and pad. I tried writing a reply. Something neutral, gracious, honest. I wrote, "Congratulations. I hope it's a smooth pregnancy. Thank you for thinking of me. Then, I'd like to come, but I also don't want to make anyone uncomfortable. Then, let me know if you mean it." I stared at the words. Then I tore the page in half, then in quarters, then tossed it all into the motel trash bin. I didn't need to send anything, not yet. The next morning, Clara and I drove to a small town market. She bought a new scarf. I got a haircut from a barber named Leo, who didn't ask questions, just trimmed and nodded and hummed along to a country tune on the radio. That afternoon, we stopped at a thrift store. I found a navy suit jacket, nearly identical to the one I'd worn for Jack's high school graduation. It fit perfectly. I bought it for $12. That night, Clara and I sat in a diner watching the sunset bleed into the horizon. We didn't talk much. After dessert, she looked at me and said, "Go. Go where?" "You know where." I shook my head. "What if it's just another round of being tolerated?" She sipped her coffee. "You're not going for them," she said. "You're going for the baby. Maybe that kid will see something their dad didn't. Maybe not. But don't let fear write your ending." I smiled. "You're too wise to be sitting in cheap diners with me." She laughed. "Maybe. Or maybe this is where the real wisdom hangs out." The next day, I dropped her off at a bus station in Oklahoma City. She was headed to see an old friend in Colorado. We didn't hug. We didn't need to. Just a wave. And a look that said, "You mattered." I drove home that night. The invitation still sat in my messages. No follow-up, no pressure. Sunday came. I stood in front of the mirror in my new thrift store jacket. Hair neat, shaved, a little cologne I hadn't touched in years. I looked at myself and tried to see what Jack saw, what Lauren feared, what the baby might one day know. I didn't find any answers, but I didn't feel empty either. I picked up my keys, and then I paused. I didn't check the time. I didn't send a text saying I was on the way. I just stood there, breathing, remembering, feeling. Then I smiled, gently, quietly, and walked toward the door. Did I go? Maybe. Maybe not. But this time, it wasn't about whether they wanted me there. It was about whether I was ready to show up anyway.